Welcome to the Presence Podcast. In this series, we're going to look at how we can each encounter the presence of God more effectively and how God's presence is always with us.
Jesus is the master of asking questions. Across all four Gospels, Jesus is asked 183 questions. Do you know how many of those he actually answers? Well, theologians can't really agree on what a straight answer is, but at best, Jesus answers just 8 of them. But then he goes on to ask 307 more questions of his own. So let's do the maths here. That's way more questions that Jesus asks than he gives answers. And these questions are almost always about people and their humanity. They're questions about compassion and healing, of faith and doubt, questions about worry, duty, and the extent and reach of love. One of these big questions comes in Luke's Gospel in chapter 7, verses 36 to 50. It's the story where Jesus goes to a dinner party at the home of a Pharisee named Simon. And while they are eating dinner, a woman, simply described as a sinner, we're given no extra details here, she crashes the party because she has heard that Jesus would be there. It says she falls to the ground and begins to bathe Jesus' feet with her tears. She also lets down her hair, which for women of that time was a most intimate gesture that would have been incredibly taboo in public. She then uses her hair to dry Jesus' feet before she pours perfume all over them and covers them in kisses. Her actions only add to the scandal of her being there in the first place. Because this woman is known as a sinner, the Pharisees and other people want nothing to do with her. The righteous people act as if she does not even exist. And these community conventions are so strong and so well known that Simon simply assumes that Jesus must not recognize that she is a sinner. Simon concludes that Jesus does not see the woman for who she is, because if Jesus did, he would surely treat her as if she were invisible, just like everyone else in the room. And then the question moment arrives, and Jesus asks Simon, "Do you see this woman?" In this setting and in this company, it is a probing and challenging question. The woman is kneeling right in front of them, but that does not mean that any of them actually see her. And sometimes people choose not to see. There is, after all, a cost to seeing. If you choose to actually see her, you might come to realize that she's no different from you, as someone in need of love and forgiveness, in need of freedom. If you see this woman, you might be convicted to stop labeling her from a distance and be moved to do the difficult thing of getting to know her and her story. And if you see this woman, you might see in her your own brokenness, and in compassion, choose to relate to her as a person, as one broken soul to another. Simon only sees what sort of woman she is, but Jesus did not see a sort of woman. He sees this woman, a beloved child of God. Jesus doesn't judge her based on what she's done or the reputation she's garnered because she's a known sinner. Jesus simply sees her and says something she would never have heard before. Your sins are forgiven. Your faith has saved you. Go in peace. In his presence and in his eyes, she is loved, forgiven, and free. This story should challenge us to see others as Jesus does. But it should also challenge us about how we see ourselves. I'd hedge a bet that we all look in the mirror at some stage of the day. But when you look in that mirror, ask yourself this question of Jesus. Do you see this person? How do you see yourself? Do you see someone who has let you down? Do you see a failure? Do you see someone broken, seemingly beyond repair, or someone falling apart? Or do you, like Simon and the Pharisees, see the person standing before you as a sinner? Someone to be ignored, someone who can't be loved or forgiven, or someone who will always be trapped in the same cycle over and over again. I know I've looked in the mirror and seen this person staring back at me from time to time. But what if we stopped looking in the mirror with our own eyes and truly saw ourselves with Jesus' eyes? What if we took a sacred moment each and every morning to consciously step into the presence of God in front of a mirror and look at ourselves and see that in Jesus' eyes, we are loved, forgiven, and free? I wonder if it would radically change our life, just as it radically changed the woman's life in this story. And I wonder if this kind of seeing would change how we saw, loved, and forgave others as well. So right now, wherever you're listening to this, I'd like to invite you to ask Jesus to help you have new eyes to see yourself as he does, as a beloved child of God. And ask him to give you the compassion to see everyone around you the same way as well. And the next time you're in front of a mirror, or better yet, every morning, why don't we all stand in front of that mirror, look our reflections dead in the eye, and remind ourselves that in his presence, we are loved, forgiven, and free.
Thanks for joining us today in our Presence podcast. We hope you picked up a thought or an idea that might just help you come a little closer to God and sense his presence in your everyday life.